Passions! Best Games Rant, number 5, Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty. I love Metal Gear Solid. I do love me some Metal Gears. It's probably my favorite long-running, narrative-driven video game franchise. I would probably list Sons of Liberty as my second favorite, after Snake Eater, which we'll probably get in another... We'll get to that, in another vid. But, Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty is definitely one of my favorite games in the franchise. I love it. I adore it. It's not everyone's favorite, but I love this game. The thing I think I love the most about it is just how it subverts your expectations. Everything about this game, the way it toys with the player's head, the way it gets inside your head as the player, subverts your expectations and deconstructs the original game, is something you rarely see even nowadays from video game sequels. And it's brilliant. I love it. I do think that the funny part of it is that my experience with it is probably different than a lot of people who played Metal Gear Solid 2 because it was my entry point into this series. I had played like a demo of the original game back on PlayStation Underground or whatever, but I had never played the original game fully. So I didn't have this attachment to Snake going into MGS2 that a lot of other players had. I wasn't already a Metal Gear fan who had seen the Solid Snake's arc and his character, and so all of this was new to me. Everything in Sons of Liberty was new. I didn't know who the hell Liquid was, Ocelot. I didn't know any of these character names or any of this stuff that it was referencing, which I think only made it better for me going into it because rather than the disappointment that a lot of fans felt, I was thrilled by just how much I got out of this game. I mean, I went into it kind of expecting just this stealth espionage military game. I wasn't expecting all of this existential, philosophical, postmodern stuff that this game was filling my head with. My 12-year-old brain back in 2001 or 2002 or whatever. I just was completely blown away by all that stuff. It made me think a hell of a lot more than any games had at that time. And it really was what endeared me to not only Metal Gear Solid, but Kojima himself, the director, maybe even more so because the lore of Metal Gear itself, the world, whatever, the characters, all of that stuff was still new to me and was still very confusing and baffling and, in the best way. It was all awesome. It was all intriguing. The supervillains, all the crazy powers, all the stuff. I loved it all, but Kojima's direction and the way he played with your expectations, not just of, the original Metal Gear Solid if you had played that beforehand, but video games in general. Just the way he deconstructed what players expected from it. The way he broke the fourth wall. The Colonel towards the end of the game telling you to actually shut your console off, to turn off the PS2 and go to bed. Stuff like that, those crazy moments that the game delivers, the way it was able to unnerve the player by being so meta and so self-aware was something that I had never experienced in a game up to that point. And I'm sure it was the same for a lot of people going into that game for the first time, especially if you hadn't played the original Metal Gear Solid beforehand, which was my case. And I think that's why, for me, what I fell in love with Metal Gear Solid and Hideo Kojima as a director was just the unpredictability of Kojima as a director, which is why I'm still so excited for Death Stranding, because even if it's not Metal Gear anymore, it's still Kojima, and as far as I'm concerned, anything new we get from Kojima is going to have the same appeal, so long as that's what you loved about Metal Gear Solid, was Kojima's Just brilliant and unpredictable game direction, which, I love the characters, I love all the bric-a-brac, the actual nuts and bolts of playing Metal Gear Solid, sure, the stealth, all the gameplay, but what really made me fall in love with the series was the storytelling and Kojima's ability to pull the rug out from under you again and again. So, in that respect, I think Metal Gear Solid 2 is the best entry in the series if we're just talking about what a trickster Kojima is and how good he is at getting inside the player's mind. I think he did that extremely well with MGS2, and I think that's the one aspect more than anything else that makes it one of the best games ever made. So, yeah, on to the next vid.